going to slide right into another industry expert fireside chat, all about how we are going to be breaking through the barrier of generative AI in financial services. Who's excited to get right into AI early in the morning here? Yes, more AI, more AI. All right, so let's get your hands together. We're going to bring up Jacquelyn Reardon and Diego Lomanto. Come on up, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a clicker? Does anyone have a clicker?
Oh, Steve, you have the clicker?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, he's trying to steal the clicker.
This is a moving object.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. My name is Diego Lomanto. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Writer. I am joined here today by Jacquelyn Reardon from Franklin Templeton. First off, Jackie, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Franklin Templeton? Well, I'm sure most people know the company.
Sure. Yeah, good to see everyone again. I have the pleasure of leading our U.S. marketing organization for Franklin Templeton, which is a global asset manager. We have about $1.6 trillion in assets across all asset classes, many, many different vehicles. And as you can see, we've got folks with boots on the ground, as we say, all over the globe. You'll see on the right hand of that slide some of the things that we're really focused in on from an innovation and investing standpoint, custom tax management, and then some of our flagship strategies that we are really focused in on vehicle optionality. So think SMA, ETF, et cetera. So really happy to be here, Diego.
And what is your role at Franklin Templeton?
Head of U.S. marketing.
Okay, great. My name, as I said, is Diego. I'm from Writer. Let me just give you a real brief overview of what Writer is and what we do. We are a fully integrated, full-stack platform for building AI applications in your business. We are very, very focused on financial services. We also have a lot of prominence in healthcare and retail and e-commerce, but financial services is our most popular vertical. We provide everything companies need to build their own AI applications and workflows. And so if everyone here is probably quite familiar with using ChatGPT or using generative AI for personal productivity, helping me write my emails, create meeting summaries, help me plan my vacation, we take it a step further and we help you build real applications that help you run your business and run your department. And we have everything you need, including the LLM, and I won't spend too much time, but we offer all of the other components that you need alongside the LLMs to drive a real adoption of generative AI inside your business and make a difference. We are a relatively young company, but we've been accelerating quite rapidly and becoming recognized. We work with the world's biggest companies, the Fortune 10, 50, 500, Global 2000 are our primary customers. And you can see a couple of logos there on the slide. And we have just recently been recognized by Gartner as the leader in generative AI technologies, both from a generative AI engineering and from an application perspective. And so that's a little bit about Writer. So why don't we get into generative AI in the marketing department,
Awesome.
Jackie? Cool.
Great.
So let's start off a little bit, let's start at the start. How did Franklin Templeton sort of think about getting started with generative AI? Where, obviously there was a lot of buzz, there's been a lot of buzz for the last 2 years, but when it came down to really thinking about how to bring it into the marketing department, how did you identify the need? How did you go about thinking about how to get started?
Well, I think we were faced, and we continue to be faced with, something that I'm sure many of you are also faced with. As you saw on that slide about our firm, we have a lot of different capabilities globally, and we're really trying to push forward to create new capabilities, which means we have an ever increasingly complex distribution organization. So gone are the days of sort of like the one wholesaler with a manageable territory, and they have 4 things in their bag, and they're just kind of talking about those. We have a generalist wholesaler model, many different specialist teams. We have an affiliate model, many different investment teams. So it's a very complex distribution organization. So from a marketing perspective, that presents a significant amount of challenges, mostly from a resourcing standpoint. I'm sure if we asked for hands to see if any of your organizations are actually adding headcount to marketing, right now, nobody would raise their hands.
We have laughter. We didn't have hands, we had laughter for that one.
And, we've been in that situation for a long time, too. So we're not adding any new headcount. If anything, we're sort of the fee pressure that we see in our industry is continuing to force us to think through how best to deploy that headcount. So we were really faced with a situation where we're like, how do we become more efficient and scale the actual human capital that we do have. So that was one of the things that really got us to think, okay, we really have to start paying attention to what AI is and specifically what can it do for us within marketing. We're really lucky from a firm standpoint that we have a lot of top-down support. So our CEO is amazing. If you've ever seen her talk, she has a clear vision of where not only our industry but other industries are going in the future. So if something like AI isn't going to freak her out. She's going to be like, great, let's wrap our arms around it and really figure out how to make it work across the organization. And then we're also really lucky to have a head of AI. So we have a whole group of people who are really thinking about how do we implement this across the board. So from a marketing standpoint, it was kind of a no-brainer for us to say, we absolutely have no idea what we're doing, but we need to figure out how to learn and figure out how to get this to really, really scale what we're doing in the future.
Got it. And like a lot of the folks that we work with, I think many companies are probably still in this phase where there's a lot of experimentation. They're trying to decide how do we patch together all these different technologies to come up with actual applications that are useful. How did you arrive at the idea of using sort of a platform, using a full stack platform, as opposed to stitching it together yourself and trying to experiment internally to figure out what the technology pieces are? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty good at building certain things, but I think we're at a situation where after going through several acquisitions over the last couple of years, we were kind of swimming in different technologies and a MarTech stack that we were still really trying to think through. So the idea that we would kind of think about new versus building or trying to piece together was actually like completely within our wheelhouse, particularly as we've gone through an exercise of saying, all right, we've got these 4 platforms over here. Do we need all 4 of them? Do we just need one, et cetera? So the idea that we could kind of think about it from a platform standpoint, particularly thinking about can it replace or do the job of 4 or 5 that we already have was really compelling to us.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess part of the answer to this is that the fact that you have a head of AI, but why not just pick a marketing product in marketing and an HR product in HR? Why go with a sort of platform across the business?
I think it's important for any large firm to make sure that if this is probably a lot of topics, but I think AI in particular, that it rolls up somewhere, right? And it's not disparate across different groups for a lot of reasons, security reasons, compliance reasons, et cetera. But really, I think from like a consistency and guardrail standpoint, especially in our industry, I think you have to really make sure that you've thought through those things. And the idea that this could be a platform that's consistent across all teams, and ideally, there's some accountability that it's rolling up to, is really great. I can't even imagine if like our PR team was doing something completely different over here than what we are, because then you get into a situation where maybe you're finding shorter term efficiencies, but definitely not enterprise or meaningful cost or resource.
I think that's a really key point, because what ends up happening when you go point solution by point solution, department by department, is that the head of AI or the CIO starts to get fatigued by all the products that they have to manage that they don't really understand well enough to feel comfortable, and maybe compliance is an issue there too, right? That they don't feel comfortable with all of these generative AI applications that are out there doing God knows what, right? To some degree. And they start then with a no.
Right.
But when you start with a top-down centralized approach, you start with the yes because the guardrails are there. It's been vetted. It's been approved by the head of AI. It's been approved by the CIO. It's been approved by security and compliance. And that makes it a lot easier, I think, to get up and running and start rolling out use cases. Is that fair?
Of course, yeah, and I think that there then ends up being some accountability too, right? So we're going to onboard this platform, we're going to use it across teams, and now we're actually going to pay attention and see if you're using it, and also how are we measuring the effectiveness of this, particularly if there's an investment involved.
Perfect. So I know you ended up going with Ryder. There's other options out there. How did you go about that process of selecting a vendor? What did that look like at Franklin Templeton?
I think me and my boss too are lucky to always sort of be interacting with different vendors and new solutions. So part of that was some networking, and part of that was referrals too. So we ended up with Ryder, at least just to kind of talk and roll up our sleeves and figure this out. I think one of the decision points for us was, one, sort of that enterprise-wide approach. One was also our head of AI saying, I really like what they've got going on here. But I think the differentiation for us was we had no, like I said, we didn't know what we were doing. We knew that we wanted to explore it, but we had no idea what the use cases could possibly be. We didn't have that context. We didn't know what we didn't know yet. And I think throughout that discovery process, it was really, really thoughtful, tons of workshops to really get to the core of where we're finding inefficiencies and where maybe we're spending too much money on XYZ, or we have a clunky situation over here, we have a bunch of contractors doing XYZ. That whole discovery process for us was really, really key. So now, one, as leaders, we had the context of how we should actually be thinking about this, longer scale, but then also we were able to give the tools to sort of our teams to say, start thinking about this in this type of way. Here's some examples of use cases. So that discovery and workshopping process for us was absolutely necessary just to understand how we should be thinking about this and how we need to really embed it in our planning going forward.
Right. I think the key takeaway there that I've seen that's driven a lot of the success of Franklin Templeton and others who are doing well in this space is that partner with your vendor. Hold your vendor accountable to not just be a piece of technology, but your Sherpa and your guide through this changing dynamic time. They're at the front lines of what the technology do. They don't know your business. They don't run your business. That's where you come in.
Right.
But your vendor, your AI vendor, really needs to help you understand in a way that benefits you, not them,
Right.
how this can help you at your business. And we found that that is the role that we like to play in what leads to success.
Yeah, especially in something so new, right?
Yeah.
AI, at least in the context that we're all leveraging it and thinking about it as an infant. So it's okay to say, I've literally no idea what it is or how I should be using it. Really, please help me. You all are the experts on that. To your point, we're the experts on our actual business and what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, but I think a little bit of humility in those workshops is really important.
And there should be, 3 to 8 use cases that your vendor comes to you with, hey, we've done this, dozens, hundreds of times at this point with a lot of other companies. These are the ones where most customers start, but let's talk about that, and then let's hear what is useful to you. So speaking about use cases, how are you using generative AI? What are you using it for?
So there was a couple of use cases that became apparent pretty quickly, and again, I mentioned contractors. So we had one in particular around versioning of content. So like many of you might have the same sort of challenge. We work with plenty of intermediaries, and we have to take our sort of general off-the-shelf investment commentary and then version it for different firms. So a Merrill Lynch will say, hey, I know that you publish a 250-word large cap value commentary, but we would prefer it if it was 200 words. And then a city will come in and say, we'd actually prefer it if it was 127 words. So we found that we had all these situations where we were taking basically the same content and paying contractors just to sit there and sort of go through the different commentary and version it out. That was one of the first. And I would actually almost recommend going with something like that first and foremost, where there's a hard dollar cost around it. So for us, it was super easy to measure, one, whether or not we were going to explore it, and then two, if it did work out, what the actual hard dollar was that we can
Yeah.
actually say, wow, we saved X amount of dollars.
Right. Our title is breaking the ROI barrier, right?
Yes.
So like that is I just want to underscore that point. That use case is so easily quantifiable that you can take it and show the success in a very, very simple manner.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and like soft dollar is harder, but like a hard dollar, we get invoiced on a monthly and quarterly basis from this group of people was really easy. One of the other use cases we used it for right away was paid search and paid social, just to version out some of those as well. Again, a lot of times it's like really short sort of, wording. Someone just has to sit there and kind of go through and figure out all the different versions, but could we spit out a bunch of them and then still have somebody kind of reviewing that list quickly and saying like, oh, actually, 12 of these 15 are great and I'll end up using them.
I think you brought a clip. I feel like Jimmy Fallon. I think you brought a clip. Why don't we play it? Walk us through what we're doing here.
So here, sorry.
We're starting the app up. There we go.
Yep, here's the app. So we actually, Ryder built for us a custom app based on this use case. Here, we're popping in the specifics. Oh, this user is so much
fast.
quicker than
Sorry.
I am. But actually, it's helpful, right? Because you're seeing how quickly that is. They built this custom app for us. We put in some of the specifics, popped a little button up, and now you can see here all the different options that have immediately popped up. Now, the user, the person who's in here using this app is also, again, able to kind of go through this and say, I love all of these, I love half of these. Let me ask it to kind of think through it again. But you can see just how absolutely quick and amazing that was. I think what's really helpful, particularly with this use case, is we had one gentleman who was doing this all the time. He's one of our creative folks, so he's probably the most apt to be able to do this. But you can appreciate how much sort of brain space that takes, right? He was sitting down, for at least an hour or two at a time, kind of thinking through.
Yeah.
Now this is prompting super easily, right? So he could still come in over top of this and say, I really, I 99% like these, but maybe I'm going to just, improve upon it a little bit. But it's saving him so much time. So that was less a money save, right? Because that's a full-time employee. That's some soft dollar cost. That's hard to quantify. But for us, that was a time save.
Right.
And he's a gentleman who has a lot on his plate. So for us to be able to come back and say, all right, this used to take 2 hours, and now this takes 5, 10, that's huge. That's like a phenomenal way to, again, from an ROI standpoint, really get to the bottom of some meaningful improvement early on.
And he can just be more productive. He can do more.
Yes.
You can enter more markets, do more
Exactly.
marketing, run more campaigns
Yes.
with that, right?
Yeah, this isn't like the highest creative, burn for him. There's other more complex campaigns for him to put that energy against.
Yeah.
So to be able to free up his time to focus on those other things is huge.
Yeah, and just last on this screen, what you're seeing, you might ask, well, I use ChatGPT for this, so I just put it in and say, write me this stuff. Each of the things on the left-hand side is constructed behind the scenes as a prompt that is telling the LLM, telling the system how to interact with this piece of data that we've spent time working with you to
Right.
curate what that prompt looks like so that we get the end result that is consistently very, very good.
Exactly.
And then you just run this app every single time.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Cool. All right. That was great. So how would you estimate the ROI impact in general, and how much time has the team saved using this stuff?
I think, those are probably the two early use cases, and we were talking a little bit the other day about particularly asking for an investment when working with a new vendor. We knew that early on we really had to prove some things pretty quickly. So for us, we were able to, again, with that commentary use case, show thousands of dollars saved right off the bat. And then from this, the time saved. So if we think about these two use cases, there's hours saved, probably 10 to 15 hours for that one sort of high creative employee on a monthly basis, and then there's, probably $5,000 to $6,000 saved per month just with that commentary use case. So those were just two right off the bat. We're like, hey, this is something we need to dig into. I think as we've explored many, many more use cases and really implemented this across the board, for my U.S. marketing organization, everyone's goals have some sort of call out of mandatory usage of AI. So I think that's something that we're continuing to see, shorter term soft dollar improvements and additional hard dollar improvements as well.
And what are the hurdles that you faced? How'd you overcome those? Because nothing is ever really easy, right?
No. I think, I talked a lot about kind of the top-down support, so we're really lucky that we didn't have to go convince executives that we should do this. Compliance in our industry, of course, can be a hurdle. Thankfully, we're able to kind of get them along for the ride pretty quickly, and I was actually pretty stunned with their willingness to do so. I think one of the things that really helped us with that early on was to show them all of this ROI can actually help them as well. One of the other use cases we haven't chatted about is our style guide. So you mentioned that app created specifically for us. The way that it says high dash yield, for example, is part of our style guide. So every output, no matter what we're using it for, is checking against our specific style guide. That's something that I loved very much from a consistency standpoint. But one of our arguments to compliance was this is really going to help lessen the risk, if anything, because we're creating more consistency, we're making sure that our disclosures are more consistent, we're reducing the amount of errors. So they really got on board with that approach. So I would say compliance at first, but hasn't been a roadblock. I would say the other major concern that's an ongoing one, and one that we're continuing to battle, is really just the change management.
Yeah.
I think for many folks, even if they see the value, they're totally not sure. And then, of course, there's going to be a little bit of concern around this is taking something off my plate, but is that a bad thing? Versus thinking about it in the use case we talked about earlier, which is, that gentleman's saving 2 hours so that he can work on higher value things. So just because we're taking some sort of tasks away from someone doesn't mean that, they're no longer needed, right? We're just diverting their energy. So for me, that's really, from a leadership standpoint, an ongoing thing that we're really talking about. Behavior change is really hard. Process change is really hard. So we're continuing to work through that.
Cool. I have one last question, then we'll open it up for questions. Can you talk a little bit, you mentioned the head of AI briefly earlier. Some of you may have a head of AI, some of you may be, your CIO owns AI from a top-down perspective. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship and what you've learned in terms of how to build a fruitful relationship there so that you can actually get the runway to do these things?
Yeah, I think he's a phenomenal partner for us because I think he's really pushing, again, enterprise, but from a marketing standpoint, he's really helping us think through additional use cases. And again, I would reiterate that Ryder's been a huge partner in us and really brainstorming and thinking through new use cases. I think where he's also been phenomenal as a partner is really, ticking and tying things on the back end, right? So if we go to him and say, hey, we really want to push for this new process, help us think through that. He and his team are able to kind of go across the enterprise and really figure out how best to kind of do that piping in the background. I think also from, a ROI standpoint as well, he's really tracking that. But he's continuing to really think through how do we make sure that this is not just a marketing exercise, this is not just a compliance exercise, but how do we actually, start to think about this within our investment teams as well? How does this become more of our investment process? So he's been a huge partner in us and thinking through and providing that accountability, which I think is huge.
And I think, once again, big takeaway there is to make sure that you have direct connection and align with your CIO or your head of AI so that it's considered part of an overall roll-up. And I think actually, to spark a little bit more of the imagination here, we have an example of how it's used outside of marketing in a financial services institution. Are you familiar with this one?
Yes.
Okay, let's play it, and hopefully it doesn't go too fast. So what are we doing here? We're creating advisor content, right?
Yes, yeah. So this is a little bit more of that commentary use case that we were talking about, and really thinking through what is the information that's dropping in here? How are we pulling that out? So you'll see actually just dragging the content in there and then being able to sort of version that out. So you'll see sort of each of those little boxes, sort of the information that we're asking it to spit out. But you can just see how, again, quickly this is, like just dropping that information and this is popping out. The person who's kind of running this is able to come in and say, how accurate is this? Did it capture the right things? Is it doing the things that I want it to? So it's just phenomenal. This one's been such a game changer for us because, again, we're really thinking through how best to kind of use that money, et cetera. And as we have significantly more higher touch client asks in the future, I think many people are in the same situation, particularly in an intermediary business, where our clients are asking us to do way more for them, and they want fewer partners, and they're kind of coming up to us and saying, we only want to have 4 or 5 key strategic partners, but that means you have to do way more for us, and we want much more personalization. So this is something where, great, but that would take a ton of people. If we can leverage something like this to sort of easily be able to scale that, that's going to be unbelievably meaningful to those strategic relationships.
And your CIO or your head AI can then say, we're using it for customer service as well as in marketing, and it's a much more powerful story when you could round it out with more than just the marketing use case. Just gives the leeway then marketing to do their work too, because it's a broader initiative that's across the business. Alrighty, why don't we open up for questions, if we have any in the audience? I see some hands. Yep.
Good morning,
Jeff.
everybody. Jackie, I think I heard you say yesterday the best time to start this process is 2 years ago. The second best time is now. So I'm curious about the timeline associated with the project. How long did it take to do the brainstorming and talking to vendors? What are some of the stage gates along the way? And how long does it take to make one of these apps and deploy it? So just some of the timeline orientation.
Yeah, that's great. So I think we've been involved with Writer for at least 6 months.
Yeah.
I think that's probably my best estimate. And yeah, yesterday I said I wish we had started sooner. I wish we had really dug in, 2 years ago, just because we were able to see such ROI so quickly. I think some of the solutioning and brainstorming with Writer took place over the course of weeks.
Yes.
And then some of the custom apps that we identified, same. I think those came back fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like the rollout and testing. So we also, from a writer standpoint, we needed a significant amount of training, and that happened very quickly. So I think we've generally been involved about 6 months, but it feels like 6 years in the best possible way, because I feel like they're just an extension of our team. And I would just recommend, if whoever you partner with really understands that you can't just throw a technology over the fence and then you're just going to magically start using it. You need that training. You need those custom use cases. You need to move quickly. And I think also what's been really helpful as well is it's always changing, right? So AI is always changing, the technology's changing, writers always improving their technologies. So we've kind of gone back and revisited use cases as well, or kind of improved them along the way. So that's why it feels much longer, but very easy and very quick to kind of go from we should do this to we're doing it.
Yeah, I'd say depending on the complexity of the organization, it could be as little as 6 weeks, or it could take 6 months. It really just depends on how complex what your building is, and how complex the organization is to navigate, and how many kind of approvals you need to go through.
Right.
But it could be really fast or moderately fast. Next question.
Hi, John Stewart here. Great insights, Jackie, thank you. Just two-part question. One part is, how do you think about controlling, and how do you sort of manage controlling the output? And the second part, and you can feel free to answer or not, is more, did you have sort of embarrassing situations, hallucinations, and all those things we worry about all the time, and sort of the output?
Never anything embarrassing, and never any hallucinations. It's a tough word. So no issues. There's always a person involved. Those sort of videos we just showed, that's a person obviously going in and reviewing that output so that they can say, wow, this is this is spot on, or this is not even close. We have a proofing and QC process that we go to anyway, like a maker checker, and then there's also, principal or compliance review on things. So I don't have any fear that anything would get out the door without some human oversight involved.
Cool. I do apologize. I think we're out of time for questions, and I apologize because I think I snuck 1 or 2 extra questions in there for Jackie during the conversation. But Jackie, you're around if
Yes.
anyone has questions.
Yeah.
We have a booth in the exhibit hall. Please do stop by, and we'd love to talk to you further.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Jackie.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.